Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. We continue today with the Ahara Bojjhanga today. And if we do finish, or even next week, we will continue with the other sutra that I have circulated, the Brahmacharya, Mahakottila Sutta, Mahakottila Sutta, which will also connect to what we have gone through in the Ahara Bojjhanga, in a sense of analyzing self. Now, let us come to page number 332 on the handout of the Ahara Bojjhanga Sutra, where we read verse 13 onwards. And I must also thank Devika for sending me the reminders with the places every single day. Shiroma does this with the Abhidhamma classes as well. So thank you, Devika and Shiroma, for keeping me or reminding me of the places to start every start of the day. So good afternoon, Devika. So we read today. And what bhikkhus is food for the arising of the unarisen awakening factor of concentration, samadhi sambodjhanga. Samadhi sambodjhanga. There are bhikkhus, the sign of calm, samatha nimitta, the undisturbed sign, avyagga nimitta, frequently giving wise attention to them. This is the food for the arising of the unarisen awakening factor of concentration, and for the growth and abundance of the arisen awakening factor of concentration. Now, samatha nimitta, that is taking a samatha object. So any of the 40 samatha objects, taking a samatha nimitta. Taking a samatha nimitta is when the volition of the mind is such that you are now cognizing an object as a samatha nimitta. When this samatha nimitta is continuously, the mind is applied to it with wise attention, yonso mansikara, then the samatha nimitta develops into a nimitta where it is also undisturbed, meaning the ability to go forward into the deeper concentrations with dhyana and so forth. Now, in the commentary to this, the commentary adds the following 10 conditions that lead to the arising of the awakening factor of concentration. Number 1, purification of the basis. Purification of the basis is where you have the purification in terms of what comes before this. The foundations. The foundations, which could also include, right, which could also include the preparation, the cleanliness of the environment that you are in. Now, mind you, that in the Vinaya Pitaka, there is a rule promulgated by the Buddha towards the Sangha. If a bhikkhu is to go to the Rukkamula, the Rukkamula, which is to the root of a tree, in in the forest to meditate. Before meditating, now let us say, around this tree, right? Around this tree, there's a lot of leaves, or that it is unkept, or all of that, right? Where it has not been swept, let us say. Now, many of these instances would be where monks reside in kutis in the forest, where the kutis with the meditation path, the Satman Malua, the walking meditation path, and the seated concrete placements under the trees. Now, let us say, if a bhikkhu is to go to meditate here and it is unkept, the Buddha says, first you must sweep and clean, and then sit down for your meditation. And then sit down for your meditation. When your environment is clean, that is another condition for the settling of mind, purification of basis. Second, the balancing of the spiritual faculties. The balancing of the spiritual faculties, as we have also come across this, how we do this frequently in the Sunday classes, balancing of the spiritual faculties is also something that we have already seen in the earlier parts with regards to the earlier Sabbodhangas as well. It would be it is easy, or one could understand that when you are balancing the spiritual faculties, or when one part is being developed, with this part there could be other awakening factors that also are developed at the same time. How? Because in all of these instances, it is the different capacities of mental chetasika and chitta arising. As you develop, let us say, in concentration, your virya, upon being balanced again through the balancing of the spiritual faculties, the virya will also go through a certain amount of change, but there is also a change that befalls, or the responsibility falls upon you to maintain or continue or manure it further, which we do in our meditation and in the daily things that we go about, right? Balancing of the spiritual faculties. Third, skill in the meditation sign, which is to say, skill in the meditation sign is, of course, as we practice, becoming skillful in the sign, in holding the sign, the samatha object in your mind. 4, timely exerting the mind. Number 5, timely restraining the mind. Number 6, timely gladdening the mind. Timely exerting the mind, timely restraining the mind, and timely gladdening the mind. As you could understand, this is also a factor that is connected to the balancing of the spiritual faculties as well. Because in our daily lives, as we make these determinations, even in the practice, timely exerting of mind comes to be known by the yogi more and more as one becomes skillful with practicing towards attaining a state of skillfulness with the meditation sign. How do you do that sort of thing? You constantly sit. You try to bring yourself into the practice, because remember, we are talking about samatha here. How do you become skillful in the sign? You advert yourself to the sign again and again, again and again, re-advert in the mind with yonso manasikara, and with time, as you balance the spiritual faculties, you become skillful in the meditation sign. You become skillful in the meditation time. As you become skillful, you come to learn At what times do I exert the mind? At what times do I restrain the mind? At what times do I gladden the mind? Now, first, if you take timely exertion of the mind and timely restraining of the mind, as we experience in our own meditation practice, there are times where we have to exert a certain amount of energy to go through a certain portion or a part of our meditation practice. Hmm? Exerting the mind. Let us say if a certain thing, if a certain distraction appears, we exert the mind to overcome the distraction, for example. Now, restraining the mind. Timely restraining of the mind is when one adhering to a certain object, whilst being with this object, it is like the push and the pull between whatever object that is present. Restraining the mind, letting go of the object with, which means pulling the mind back from the object. So, how the mind balances itself with this object, timely exerting the mind, timely restraining the mind. Hmm? Now, this restraint of the mind and exertion of the mind could also apply to the things that we cognize, the datum that we cognize through the sense doors through the external world as well, where with the external world exerting the mind towards objects, or for the mind to continue upon its yoniso manasikara, so that the mind is not saturated or is not overcome by kilesha, exerting the mind in certain occasions. But when exertion, not exertion, but the requirement now is to restrain the mind, is to restrain the mind with regards to external object. At that time also, now you pull back from the object, not to overcome the object, but to pull back from this object, letting go in a way that you retreat from that object. Pull the mind back. Number 6. Now, as we adhere to concentration and concentrating samatha objects, at certain times, let us say when you overcome, let us say you've gone into upekka, you've gone into upekka, and now the mind is feeling quite bland. Now, when this is so, it is important to know at what times you stop on the upekka just for that time, go back to Priti Sukha, gladden the mind with the practice, in order to energize the mind to go forward. In order to energize the mind to be able to go forward. It may be in your daily life, because let us say when you put yourself into upekha a lot of the time, it can be very difficult for a person to then do everything that we do with the world, because you're in a state of upekha. It can even go towards deep samvega, with upekha. Now, it is necessary for the yogi who at that time to gladden the mind in order as a way of energizing oneself to adhere or focus better upon the practice forward. Do you have any questions in that regard? Number 7, looking on with equanimity at the proper time. Looking on with equanimity at the proper time. Number 8, avoiding distracted people. Number 9, associating with mentally focused people. Number 7, looking on with equanimity at the proper time. Just like with gladdening of the mind, let us say, when it comes to samatha, jhana, and arupa jhanas, all of that, there are times, for example, where you have to let go of the gladdening of the mind and bring oneself on to upekha. Now, when it comes to priti sukha, when one is attached to, let us say, the first jhana priti sukha, or the first jhana state because of the bliss that is there without letting go of that bliss, you can't find your way to the second jhana. It is in creating a sense of disattachment to the first jhana, upon seeing how weak it is, that we progress into the second jhana, letting go of the gross factors that are there present within the first jhana. In order to maneuver yourself in this manner, as you adhere to a samatha object, you learn the time for gladdening of the mind, where you go into priti sukha, and when you bring the mind into a state of equanimity to create a sense of viraga or disattachment. It is in being able to balance both these things that we are able to move forward. Now, knowing this is a part of your prajna as well, isn't it? Because how do you know these certain instances or what the right time is? Because you learn this with the practice itself. Number 8, avoiding distracted people. Number 9, associating with mentally focused people. Now, number 8 and number 9, it is coming to the people that are around us, the community that is around us, the type of interactions that we would have in our life, because these interactions filter through into the way that our mind operate and work as well. For a person cultivating samadhi, and for a person, let us say, who is resolute on attaining jhana, concentration of mind, the association with people whose life force is going or journeying towards the kama loka, because this association, anytime this association happens, there might be a certain drifting away towards the kama loka and away from the bhavana elements, or the elements that suppress the hindrances. The hindrances. So when one is walking in this path, one would naturally then come to want to avoid the company of people of a certain, as it mentions here, distracted people. But this is not because of a certain sense of anger or pushing away, but the mind does not go there. Meaning that does not become something that you cherish or that you look forward to, because a person who is going through all of these experiences would naturally gravitate towards people. Now, they have translated it as mentally focused people. This is not meant This is completely off-putting. It is referring to people who cultivate samadhi. Right? Who cultivate samadhi. So, of course, they have translated as mentally focused people, right? It is people who focus or cultivate a sense of samadhi. So, you could imagine the Sangha, meaning your community around you, your Kalyana Mitras, right? Who are walking on a certain path, and of course, where you find that support to be able to walk in that path. Number 10, right resolution, a mind bent onto the establishing of concentration. Whilst it being number 10, this is right intention, isn't it? Volition. This is how or what powers our effort, our balancing of the spiritual faculties, the right resolution bend towards establishing concentration. Now we know for a person who is bent on establishing, let us say, cultivating vipassana, that person will not develop jhana. Hmm? That person whose intent is to cultivate vipassana even through whatever object that person's mind does not go into jhana. Why? Because of the intent. Hmm? Because of the intent. For this reason, when the mind is established or bent towards establishing concentration, then the requirement for the established concentration to be will be fulfilled step by step as you take the necessary steps forward in your practice, sitting down and adhering to a practice or cultivating a singular practice through your walking meditation. Hmm? Through your walking meditation. Now, whilst this is said, it is quite usual to also see masters suggesting the the use of both samatha and vipassana together when necessary, which is as you cultivate vipassana, there are times that then you come back into your priti sukha in the jhana. And because your vipassana practice is ongoing, it is another strengthening factor for the jhana because jhana suppresses the hindrances by adhering to a singular object. Hmm? Whilst vipassana suppresses and can also lead to the complete extinction, eradication of the hindrances owing to wisdom, owing to the balancing of the faculties. So the protection there, now you can see two layers of protection. Protection through the samatha, protection through the vipassana. Now, because of that prajna that arises, as long as the hindrances can be suppressed and are suppressed, the jhana will continue to be a skill that is available and accessible to you. Accessible to you. So, masters suggest when you practice vipassana, at times it is good to come to samatha, especially into the jhanas, the priti sukha, in order to lighten the mind and to go as a sense of refreshing the mind. Now, when, for example, in Vipassana, you can have different instances when you're doing dry Vipassana also within certain people, the hindrances can also give rise to particular behaviors or motions, movements, disruptions physically, even without your knowledge happening during vipassana. When the mind is trying pulling out the roots of the kileshas, of course, there is a reaction. Now, in order to curb these reactions, what is often then suggested by the masters is to go back into your samatha object. Suppress the hindrances in that manner by adhering to one object and then coming back into the vipassana. Coming back into the vipassana. So, using both these techniques which are available to us, we attempt to suppress and work towards the eradication of these factors of kilesha arising in the mind. And these are the 10 conditions, criteria that the commentary lays down, which will lead to the arising of the awakening factor of concentration. Okay, of concentration. Now we come back. That is with regards to Samadhi Sampojjhanga that we discussed that. Now, and what bhikkhus is the food for the arising of the unarisen awakening factor Upekha Sampojjhanga. Upekha Sampojjhanga. And for the growth and abundance of the arisen and awakening factor of equanimity. Of equanimity. Here, of equanimity. There are bhikkhu, the basis for the awakening factor of equanimity. Upekha Sabodjhanga. Frequently giving wise attention to them. This is the food for the arising of the unarisen awakening factor of equanimity, and for the growth and abundance of the arisen awakening factor of equanimity. Of equanimity. Now, 38. The commentary adds the following 5 conditions that lead to the arising of the awakening factor of equanimity. 1. An impartial attitude towards beings. An impartial attitude towards beings. Number 2. A detached attitude to formations, here meaning ideas and inanimate objects, a detached attitude to formations. Number 3, avoiding possessive people. Avoiding possessive people. Quite cut and dry there, isn't it? Avoid possessive people. Number 4, associating with equanimous people. Harry, associating with equanimous people. Number 5, right resolution bent towards the establishment of equanimity. The volition that we discussed earlier with the earlier factor layer of Samadhi, Sabbodhanga as well there. Now, the first one, an impartial attitude towards beings. And number 2, a detached attitude to formations. Here, an impartial attitude towards beings. Now, what does this imply? Anuma, Munwada, what could this imply? How can we have an impartial attitude towards beings? When Hari, someone else even, if you want to, how can we have an impartial attitude towards beings?
Let be balanced minded, Bhante, not being attached to. Not being judgmental, not being attached. That we.
The judgmental comes to the second one. Being judgmental is an idea, no? So that would be the sankhya.
Oh.
Now, towards the sattvas, having an impartial attitude could entail what kind of practice? අපි කොහොමද
Metta? Metta?
impartial, so it's upekka.
මධ්‍යම ප්‍රතිපදාව මධ්‍යම ප්‍රතිපදාව
මධ්‍යම ප්‍රතිපදාව. Yes, මධ්‍යම ප්‍රතිපදාව. තා මොනවද? දේවිකා?
Can it, without an attachment, be,
not to
be
take
good,
sides
but be good. මේ කරුණාව නිකන් තියෙන්න ඕනේ without getting attachment.
attach වෙන්න බෑ. ඔව් මං කිව්ත් එකයි. කරුණා මෛත්‍රියක් තියෙනවනේ මෙත්තක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ attach වෙන්නත් බෑ.
Remember, we are discussing the awakening factor of equanimity. Okay, so here, having an impartial attitude towards beings, Qama, it is referring to a criteria for the cultivation of equanimity.
මධ්‍යම ප්‍රතිපදාව. That's right.
Cultivation of equanimity. So here, an impartial attitude towards beings, I would say, would include everything that you said. Although the dittis and that part would go into the formations, the having an impartial attitude would be when you're, let us say, when you are helping, and as you help, let us say, අර බුදුහාමුදුරුවෝ කියනවනේ, when the parishkara is offered personally to the Buddha says, no, offer it to the Sangha. Offer it to the Sangha. Because at that moment, what was going to happen was a personal donation towards the Buddha. And the Buddha said, offer it to the Sangha. I don't need it, offer it to the Sangha. Now, here, how can we align? Can we align those two here? What do you think? An impartial attitude.
Bhante, impartial attitude is equanimous attitude or unbiased attitude. I think the probably right word is unbiased.
Unbiased.
Yeah.
Unbiased attitude towards to the different beings. Towards the different beings. So when we cultivate it as a Brahma Vihara Dhamma, we come into a state of equanimity, having cultivated, let us say, metta, mudita, karuna, loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and compassion. Sympathetic joy and compassion in being able to having loving kindness, metta towards a being, to sympathetic joy when a person is going through something negative or positive, something better at their success, you have sympathetic joy for them. Whilst they are going through something which is suffering, painful, you have karuna, compassion. And this compassion, this attitude, this metta, mudita, and karuna are practices. Of course, there are meditational practices, and these meditational practices have to filter down to our vachi kriya and kaya kriya, isn't it? Because when metta, mudita, karuna starts working from samma ditti, right view, because of right view, now metta, mudita, karuna is accepted by you, is something that is within a tool of your arsenal of tools, let us say, metta, mudita, karuna, and samma ditti, samma sankappa. So now in thought, metta, mudita, karuna is enacting itself. So then from the consciousness, chittaja rupa arises. Consciousness, rupas, materiality, that arises energized or because of having mind as a condition. And what is this mind? A metta mind, a karuna mind, a mudita mind, which would mean that your kaya kriya at that time. Kaya kriya, your vachi and your kaya kriya, your actions of done through speech and body would then be influenced by this. When then the body is influenced by metta, karuna, and mudita through the arising of those chittaja rupas. Now a karma patha or a karmic cycle has been fulfilled. Now creating sankharas, future sankharas, which can ease the hurdles in your path by the now introduction of these wholesome karmas dedicated to, of course, walk in the path. Now, as you cultivate more and more of these karma pathas, remember, these are powerful kusalas that can then also influence the mind and future mind as well. As a future mind as well. For example, if you remember, there are 8 sobana chittas. Those 8 beautiful chittas through which we perform good karma also has its vipaka chitta, isn't it? Vipaka chitta. This vipaka, this resultant consciousness aids us in two places. One is the very well known death process. These vipakas, when the cycle of karma is fulfilled, karma pata is fulfilled, that is, you have intention, you enact the intention, it is all planning, you enact it through body, mind and body. When that is done, the karma pata, when there is the intention of action and the action is performed and finished, then the karma pata is fulfilled. At this time, those vipakas, the second, apart from aiding the death as patisandhi, is the tadalambana, the registration process which happens after the impulsion, javana chittas. Now, when these impulsions are present, what happens? These vipaka chittas arise at the end of one taking an object. Now, further aiding your progression. That is how you progress in the path of the Buddha. Now, for that, with the force of that previous tadahalambana, you are remembering, or a strong personality change is now upon you, where all your bodily and verbal interactions are slowly, but surely becoming more progressively stronger towards being solid. Metta, mudita, karuna. When metta, mudita, karuna being able to develop these, then it can fall to upeka at the end. Metta, mudita, karuna, upeka. They are now in this upeka that we cultivate. It is through that sense that we come to be an impartial attitude towards beings. That is very important, because one could have an impartial attitude driven by one's views, driven by one's attachment to one's position, driven by, isn't it? Driven by different factors. but none of them apply to the awakening factor of equanimity. Right? Awakening factor of equanimity. Because that impartial attitude is springing from a condition that does not align with equanimity. Hence, this equanimity, this power here, number one, should come from through that basis of metta, mudita, karuna, upekka. This, the meditator, even within one moment of meditation, when the mind falls into complete, beautiful kusala, when the mind is in a state of pure kusala, the three-rooted kusala, at that very moment, there can be metta, mudita, karuna. Metta, mudita, karuna can be present at that moment. And being that basis, a meditator is able to cultivate these attributes through the vipassana that one sees as well. Because the vipassana, what does it tell you? It shows you how all of us, regardless of what our ages might be, or what our backgrounds might be, or what nationalities we might have, what sexes we might have, regardless of all of these conventions, Vipassana shows us, or the practice helps us to learn through bhavana maya, meditational experience, to experience how we are all similar. Similar as in nama and rupa, similar as in the 5 aggregates, the 12 ayatanas, the 18 dhatus. This is dukkha satcha. These are the hindrances that arise within all of us. These are the consciousnesses that arise within all of us. Because of our attachment to self, these are the hindrances of anxiety, sadness, suffering that can arise because and faced by loss. These are the types of consciousnesses that could arise. This, we are very similar, however, our conditioning, the conditioning in our lives can be different. However, at the end of the day, you and I contemplating upon this reality, which is what we are going to find is Nama Rupa. What we are going to find is Salayatana. What we are going to find is karmas and hindrances and chittas and rupas, 28 rupas. That is where that impartial attitude comes. Okay, so it is not just that attitude, because look at this, we are talking about the awakening factor of equanimity. This equanimity helps us at adversity when the hindrances are blowing in our face. Equanimity helps us find ground, to find the balance that we require in order to overcome whatever hindrances are before us. How? By maintaining the equanimous mind. By maintaining the equanimous mind. This impartial attitude comes with the cultivation of that metta, mudita, karuna, and then unfolding in upekka. Number 2, a detached attitude from formations. As we have gone through the other factors, everyone, we have created an island onto ourselves with the Dhamma practice. Here, detachment, when you realize a moment that we, through experience, when we put away our mana, when we put away our views, when we put away all of the things that we adhere to, and then we are within this particular state where we are undisturbed, where there is no arising of further sankharas proliferating, prapancha. There you develop this experience, you learn that this nothingness or equanimity that can be experienced you experience it. As you do, you cultivate a certain sense of an attitude, which is where you are disattached to these formations being metana prajnapti, prajnapti, conventional reality. That's prajnapti. Prajnapti are concepts, isn't it? Concepts. Prajnapti. Where clinging to ideas, clinging to certain inanimate objects, which are, things that we accumulate, right? Where one does now, because one is content within oneself with the Dhamma that is shining radiantly within oneself, that becomes a condition to cultivate a detached attitude towards his sankharas. Because when there is attachment towards his sankharas, komad upeksha. How is the upeka going to flourish there? So a detached attitude towards formations. Number 3, avoiding possessive people. This, when we are surrounded by people who are possessive people, here it is talking about, people where people are ගොඩාක් attached, rooted in with expectations and all of that. When that is there, then when you are trying to be equanimous, impartial attitude and all of that, this is not seen as a good thing. This is not seen as a good thing. This is not seen as a good thing. So then, they would cry, they would plead, they would beg, they would harass you, scold you, call you a weirdo, and all of these things. So it would be very difficult for this person to cultivate or bring oneself into a place of equanimity. Equanimity. Number 4. Now, these can also sometimes be your Kalyana Mitras, right? Because I remember one of my experiences where I was living in the Aranya and I was in retreat, and as a Samaner, I was Samaner at this time, and so I would be sweeping the Bante's kutis, sweeping the outside of the kuti. So after the meditation at 5 o'clock, I would go on a certain one day of the week, I would go to these Bante's kutis, just do a line of kutis where, I sweep. So now during this time, sometimes when the Bantes would want something brought from downstairs, so I would collect it and then go into the equities and offer it and do all of that. So when I'm on retreat, that doesn't happen. So I wouldn't go into a kuti when I'm on retreat, right? So then the Bantes can't use me to carry stuff up. Right? And then some Bantes can get upset about this. Right? Some Bantes can get upset about this because Samaneras are quite, they're considered assets in a monastery because there are a lot of stuff that bhikkhus can't do that Samaneras have to do. Right? So when the Samaneras are going on retreat, often it becomes an issue to the system. So now, right, now this is now avoiding possessive people. In that case, you see that became a little bit of an hindrance to me going on retreat because I was worried to upset these Bantes. You see? Right? So now how that became an impediment. So in the same way, you would be experiencing so much with family and when you go on retreats and when you try to go on retreats where you have difficulties. Why is that? Because of course, a factor of, people, possessive people. Here, avoiding possessive people is, I would say, in many senses, a luxury. However, this is talking about, of course, this is a criteria that helps and supports you. You might feel after a meditation session you're in such good upekka and all of that, or after listening to a banner or something. But when you walk downstairs or when you go to your kitchen and then all your family is there or congregated or whatnot, then that upekka is almost forced out of your by the arising of different other questions and mum this or mum that or Archie this or Archie that, whatever it is. So it becomes difficult. So obviously in the commentaries it is outlining this as this, it becomes difficult, meaning your upekha will develop, but because it will fall again and again and again, you will have to develop it again and again and again. Ned, you'll have to develop it again and again and again up until you're resilient, able enough to be able to go through this. To be able to go through this. But of course, whilst we try to, aim for perfect conditions, remember everyone, we cannot force. You cannot force. You have to be within your places. Of course, if you're letting everything go and you want to live in this perfect atmosphere, then you have to go. You have to kalete යන්න වෙනවා, right? What I mean by this is not to say that you can't do this. No. What I mean is you can't change everyone around you. No. You can't change everyone around you. Hence, with the other dhammas that we know, even if we fall, get back up quickly. Even if we fall, get back up quickly. Resilience here becomes very important, but there are at times, right? There are at times, just like we did in the earlier factor, there are times for upekka, there is time for preeti. Preeti sukha, gladdening of mind. Neither. What we did earlier, there is time for upekka, time for preeti. Understanding that maneuver your dhamma path with the sammuti world that you live in. With the sammuti world that you live in. Even sammuti world that you live in. Then, number 4, associating with people who are equanimous. Meaning these can be kalyana mitras, it can be people who you who cultivate a practice of equanimity, right? Cultivate a practice of equanimity. Number 5, right resolution, a mind bent towards the establishment of equanimity. That is the intention to build up on equanimity, which is the awakening factor of equanimity. But again, remember, emotional regulation at times that you would choose to is also a sign of sociopathy. So when we are thinking of or trying to practice states of upekka, remember this equanimity comes from the Dhamma practice, steeped in Sila Samadhi Prajna. It is through that path that we come into equanimity in other senses, because this equanimity has to be founded in karuna, metta, mudita, karuna. If you are, let us say, you are able to be equanimous because you can just ditch people very fast. Right? Karane, just avoid. Right? Just to get rid of them. Just get rid of them. Like getting rid of a maid or an encumbrance. Just get rid of them. That's not the upekka that we are. That sort of abiding is not the upekka practice. That is very important note. Metta, mudita, karuna, upekka, or through the vipassana we come into the upekka. Through the vipassana we come into the upekka, but as we know, the Brahma Vihara Dhammas also aid in the vipassana practice as well. Now, if you do have any questions, do ask. Hari. Now, where are we? Hari upekka. Now we have done the Sabbojjhangas. The food for what are the Sabbojjhangas? Now we go into not food for the mental hindrances. And what bhikkhus is not food for the arising of unarisen lustful desire, nor for the growth and abundance of arisen lustful desire. We did this in the beginning of the sutra with the Subhanimitta. Subhanimitta. Now, there is bhikkhus. The sign is, now what are we looking at? Not food for the arising of unarisen lustful desire. That is what we are looking at. There is bhikkhus, the sign of foulness, asubha nimitta. Frequently giving wise attention to it is not food for the arising of unarisen lustful desire, nor for the growth and abundance of arisen lustful desire. Right? Arisen lustful desire. Lustful desire. Now, Asubha Nimitta. Commentary says this is one or other of the 10 foul objects, which are the 10 parts, the 10 stages of a decomposing corpse. The decomposing corpse. The sutras such as Satipatthana lists only 9 stages of bodily composition. However, in the sutras, Mahasatipatthana, Anapana, Sati, Girimananda, the practice is variously called Asubha Bhavana or Asubha Sanya or simply Asubha, foulness, or Asuchi, impurities. They all refer to the contemplation of the 31 parts of the body. 31 parts of the body. But of which the commentaries list the 32 parts, adding the brain in the head. Brain in the head. Now, commentary adds the following 6 conditions that lead to the abandoning of lustful desire. 1. Learning the sign of foulness. 2. Meditating on foulness. 3. Sense restraint. Learning the sign of foulness. This is talking about what exactly? Who can tell me? What is learning the sign of foulness? Oh, Devika. Oh, Hemali.
අනිත්‍ය දුක්ඛ අනාත්ම
නෑ. Learn the sign කියන්නේ නිමිත්තනේ. ඔතකොට learn the sign කියන්නේ මේ උග්ඝහ නිමිත්ත මේ ගැන මේ කතා කරන්නේ. Learn the sign of foulness. Now, when you have the uggha nimitta derived from, let us say, 32 parts of the body or the foulness, the 10 stages of a corpse, now when you have the uggha, what can you do? You can continue meditating on your own, going into the Asubha Bhavana whenever. It is talking about the samatha cultivation, the samatha cultivation of Asubha Bhavana here. Then learning sign of the foulness. Number 2, meditation of foulness. Now this is Asubha Bhavana. The first is learning the sign of foulness. The second is meditation of foulness. Meditation of foulness. This is the practice of Asubha Bhavana for one who has a personality or is experiencing a challenging time with lustful desire. Number 3, sense restraint. Sorry. Sense restraint. Sense restraint, Indriya Samvara. Number 4, moderation in food. Moderation in food. Number 5, spiritual friendship.
Friendship.
Here, moderation of food. Why do you think this is included here? Any ideas? The moderation in food?
එතකොට සායනහස කරන එකක් කරන්න පුළුවන් සිහිය. මොඩරේට්ලි කෑවහම නැත්තම් මතේ හැදිලා නින්දයක්.
Yeah.
Mate.
Overeating will actually create sloth and torpor.
So overeating creates sloth and torpor, which may
Yeah.
push you or give you leeway,
Yeah.
where the mind is not focused, drifting into lustful desire.
Yes.
Drifting into lustful desire. Number 5, spiritual friendship, which is Kalyana Mitrata, where you are able to talk openly about the hindrances that are arising within you and seek spiritual Kalyana Mitraship, counsel from your Kalyana Mitra in order to overcome the lustful desire. Lustful desire. Number 6, talking conducive to the 10 foul objects. Talking conducive to the 10 foul objects. Now, this would also anipad thing, right? On the other side, connecting to sense restraint. Connecting to sense restraint. This part of with the restraint that you impose upon the senses to take it away from a subha nimitta, here the mind in having conversations with other people and whatnot, you take good care not to talk or not to talk about things which can be arousing the desire or lustful desire, right? Lustful desire. This is to say, what kind of talking is this about? This is when even, let us say, in talking the Dhamma, sometimes through the Dhamma, this lustful thing can run. There, do you get what I mean? Right? You're speaking specifically about a certain topic, or you're getting this enjoyment through this discussion, let us say. Then the mind, of course, that restraint is also applied there where you call upon it and you stop, right? And bring yourself into, of course, a situation that you're not doing so. So number 6, talking conducive. Now, anipathing, talking conducive to the 10 foul objects, asubha nimitti. Talking conducive to the 10 foul objects. Lustful desire is only totally destroyed in the Arahat. Lustful desire is only totally destroyed in Arahat. We know that, but why did it have to be mentioned after such wonderful points? Because it seems that they tell you all of these things, and then at the end they still ask for desire. So getting rid of all of our greatest efforts in order to remove it completely now, right? We say yes, we do remove it at the stage of arahaship, where we get rid of any ability for this fire to be fanned on. The fire with the wood
Bullshit.
and with the dara and coal and everything is extinguished. But does not mean that we can take liberties now. Liberties now, counting on the grounds that we are not arahat. That we are not arahat. Here, it is beautiful within monasteries, monasteries where the practice is hailed supreme, and what we do in our daily life. It is beautiful how the Sangha balances this within quorums. Very interesting, because let us say now, often when you're living with the Sangha, Dhamma Sakacha is a very beautiful and something that can be expected regularly, right? A lot of the monks in Aranyas, you do find a lot of instances where they would get together with a cup of tea in the middle of the night, on top of some rock, or on a balcony somewhere with one of the kutis. Or very often, monks would get together in order to discuss the Dhamma. Now, in these discussions, if let us say a certain monk, through these discussions, these are discussions which allow the Sangha to also connect with one another naturally. Right? Now, as you have these discussions with the other Sangha members, other Bhantes, the Bhikkhus, the Samaneras, you get to know one another. You get to know what each other's hindrances are and might be, what each other's weaknesses might be, right? So within the Sangha community, there is so much of support that is given for, in order to, because these are all based off relationships, right? How connected you are with the other Sangha members. So when all of the Sangha are working toward nirvana, developing jhanas, vipassana, and all of that, it's so beautiful in the way how they deal with it, how they handle it, what their experiences are, right? And creating a sense of like a protective barrier, right? Like a protective barrier where lust and mana or dosa and all of these attributes are seen as things that are to be got rid of in this moment. Right? Yes, it is true that we will not be rid of these till Arahat, but does not mean that I am still the same fool who is blinded by or seduced by these subanimittas, because having gone through the fires of these conditions that we go through now, it is time to let go, let go, let go, rather than accumulating even further sankharas to proliferate our continued existence in this world that is going through a time of demise. A time of demise. Now, coming back. And what bhikkhus is not food for the arising of unarisen ill will, nor for the growth and abundance of arisen ill will. There is bhikkhus, the liberation of mind through loving kindness, metta, cheto, vimutti. There's a sutra about this as well, another sutra. Me- Metta, there's another sutra. Frequently giving wise attention to it is not food
For the rising
for the arising of unarisen ill will, nor for the growth and abundance of arisen ill will. The liberation of mind through metta, right? through metta. Metta Cheto Vimutti, this is the attainment of jhana. Jhana attainment through metta bhavana. This is cultivated, or the way to cultivate this is taught in the Vishuddhi Magga. මේ තියෙන Vishuddhi Magga. On the three ways, three kinds of liberation of mind through loving kindness. Now, when you follow the Metta Sutra was taught for aiding in the Vipassana path. The Vishuddhimagga teaches, or Vishuddhimagga derives from Dhammas to teach how you can develop metta to a leading towards jhana, which you will remember. First, the type of people that we take as object is a respected person. A person, no. The first object, the last is the enemy. One is a beloved person. Third is a beloved person. Let me remind myself of the order. Maybe you also remember. The last is the enemy, a respected person, an unknown person, a person who is beloved, and a person who is an enemy, considered enemy. The first, you will cultivate metta towards which person? We will cultivate metta towards the respected person. Second, after developing now a respected person that you have no qualms with, remember. Because when the metta is weak, if you, let us say, have things where negativity could arise, you avoid those. And through this, you go from a respected person to a beloved person, to an unknown person. This could be a passerby, this could be a person that helps you, whatever. This is an unknown person, meaning you know this person, you've seen him, but you're not connected to this person. Then a beloved person. Then a person who is considered an enemy, right? An enemy or a person who wishes to cause harm, maybe not an enemy of yours, but wishes to cause harm to you. In this order, you create or you cultivate the nimittas leading towards jhanic absorption. So you can go on to jhanas by just continuing along, let us say, the respected person, and through the respected person cultivating metta nimitta, and then going on to jhana. You can develop jhana through the beloved person, the unknown person, and through the person who wishes to cause you harm as well. Okay? As well. Leading to, with that, when you take avyapajjo hotu, avyapada hotu, and all of those aspects of it, independently you can go into something around 520 odd jhanas. Meaning, for example, let us say you're taking let us say, a respected person who is alive, a respected person, all these people must be alive, the respected person, and to this respected person, you're doing again and again, you're recollecting, you're adverting with yoniso manasikara through, let us say, nirogi veva. Nirogi veva. නීරෝගි වේවා නීරෝගි වේවා නීරෝගි වේවා මේක හරහා දැන් ගරු පුද්ගල නීරෝගි වේවා දැන් මේ දෙක හරහා ධ්‍යානෙට යන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් මේක නැවත මෙනෙහි කළා recollecting again and again මේකුඩ නිමිත්තක් අට ගන්නවා. මෙන්න මේ contemplation එක පාදක කරගෙන founded upon this contemplation. From there, you can enter upon the jhana. That is how, if you take අව්‍යාපජ්ජෝ හෝතු ආනීගා හෝතු සුඛියත්තානම් පරිහරන්තු මෙන්න මේ ටික ඔක්කොම ගත්තොත් if you are to take all of those and go independently one by one you can end up with so many different types of jhana, right, on the metta course. Now that is metta cheto vimutti. Metta cheto vimutti, which is referring to the jhana. Then the commentary adds the following 6 conditions that lead to the abandoning of ill will. 1. Learning the loving kindness meditation. Loving kindness meditation, metta bhavana. 2. Constant cultivation of loving kindness. Adverting to loving kindness again and again. 3. Reflection on the ownership of one's actions, responsibilities of one's actions, meaning where one is able to take if something has happened, transpired. If something has transpired, in this experience that has transpired, there is a part that is experienced by you, right? And then there is a part that is done by an external force. You have to take the responsibility for your part in this mix, which allows your part in this mix. Remember, this is not how to do it. These are criteria, remember. Because you can't force these things. These come with the practice, with the cultivation of that respective bhavana. And there, you develop a sense of ownership. Bayak nahe to take ownership. There is no shame, there is no fear to take ownership, because in a mind of a person, within the mind of a person who is cultivating this loving kindness, you are open to this failure. You're open to the natural realities of life. In that, you are not against taking ownership for one's actions. That is your part of it. Which is now, for example, let us say a passerby on the road out of nowhere blurts out some abuse at you. Some abuse at you. Now, when in your mind you put the responsibility of this completely upon this person, you would react aggressively, let us say, or you would scold this person or frown at this person or all of that, right? Want some sort of reaction. Maybe you would not even bother. Maybe you would not even bother. But when you take ownership of that part, then there is no pain. Then there is no why you're taking maybe to hear this abuse from an unknown stranger also. I must have done this in the past, no? කොයින් හරි ඒ විපාකේ ඉන්න ඒ කර්මය ඒ විපාකේ ඒ විදියට එන්න for that විපාක to arise in that manner, this might have happened at some point, no? Happened at some point. That is the taking of ownership, not only through karma but in other ways and understanding as well. Right? Not only through karma, because if you put everything into karma, right? But knowing on other levels as well, through prajna, through understanding as such, where the metta mind, if one is solid, the metta mind makes you, let us say, soft, but soft not in a way of weakness, but even in that softness there is great power. Why? Because there is not much. You can't hurt this softness so easy. You can, it is as if you can throw a piece of glass or a vase and break it, but you can't throw a pillow and break it, no. Right, you can't throw a pillow and break it, no. But That softness is not weakness. That softness is another type of power, a strength. Mm? Reflection of ownership, responsibility on one's actions. 4. Frequent reflection on usage of food, clothing, shelter, health, support. Now, this is with regards to, of course, priest monastics. Here, the frequent reflection, remember that ill will and loba has a denominator factor. What is that factor? Moha. The more one is, let us say, indulgent upon the senses, indulgent, one might very well have the right to do so. This might be wealth earned rightly and all of those things. We are not talking about any of those things. With the indulgent mind arises the denominator factor of moha, delusion. Delusion. Hence, the moha that arises with the lower can also be a contributing factor in conditioning to the moha that would later on arise with ill will. Delusion, andhabhave. Now, frequent reflection upon the usage of food, clothing, shelter, health, this creates a sense of focusedness, a sense of responsibility, a sense of presence in the fact that you are not indulgent. You're not indulgent. Why? Because when one is indulgent and one does not care much about these, it becomes a contributing factor towards the moha that then can again give way to the rising of ill will. For the bhikkhus, in contemplating upon the usage of food, clothing, shelter, health, and all of that, a bhikkhu bases oneself on a certain standard, on a certain level, where I only need things, these 4 requisites, in order to sustain my life. Sustain my life. Here, the practitioner contemplates on the things that one consumes on one's own in order for that sustenance to be present. There are vanities for sustenance with the letting go that happens with loba. Now, that will have an effect upon, again, the ill will that arises. The ill will that arises through that getting rid. Because why? Again, we are coming back to making the Dhamma is in this present moment. The Dhamma is what we are working with. The Dhamma has made us onto an island that we are content with that practice. With that practice. So all that we do, let us say what we eat or clothing, shelter, all of these things, we should be able to live with that bare minimum, right, for ourselves, not for the sake of the fact that you have to live like that, right? But even if it does come to that level, why? We only need sustenance. Why? Because you're only here for a short time and we are trying to produce cultivate the practice enough for us to attain, to continue, to progress. Number 5, Kalyana Mitrata. Kalyana Mitrata. Number 6, suitable talk. Suitable talk, not talk that is aggravating, right? Not talk that leads to a suitable manner of talk, which does not lead to the arising of ill will or, let us say, intentions tainted by ill will. By ill will. It then, just like the earlier, it says ill will is fully destroyed in the non-returner. Ill will is fully destroyed in the non-returner. This is where the conditions, after this state, the conditions for ill will are fully extinguished. Fully extinguished. However, ill will we can reduce and get rid of in this very moment, in this very mind. Even if it does arise, dosa does arise, extinguish it fast. Neither. Extinguish it fast. But also be sensitive to the fact that sometimes people around you might not be able to extinguish it as fast as you as well. මොකද දැන් පැනලා තමන් you are okay now, you have recovered 10 minutes later. The other person needs about 2.5 hours. Now this person is extinguished, then this person is nimila, then you're going back to that other person, whether the other person is still going through healing. Now when that person is not responding, now again ill will arises. Now again ill will arises. All of this, a major portion and part of it, just as the Buddha says, Sila Samadhi Prajna. Sila Samadhi Prajna. And even if you in your alone time go through these commentarial editions of the conditions, you will find that it's actually අපි ධර්මයේත් එක්ක ජීවත් වෙනවා නම් you will find that most of these parts, almost all of them, apart from the things that you had to do in your meditation, will be fulfilled. Will be fulfilled. If you are living genuinely and authentically with that moment of Dhamma within this present, most of these parts are automatically fulfilled, becoming conditions. But knowing and reading, learning these, and seeing this before our eyes also allows us and gives us the ability to contemplate upon this, and contemplate upon this and reflect upon it as with regards to our own lives and see, am I progressively working towards it, or what may I do? What may I do? How may I starve the hindrances? Starve the hindrances, because you might be experiencing the results of the hindrances, as we all do, isn't it? As we all do. And we are not happy with it when it does arise, and we want to get rid of it. But how? So this is a good review of those conditions. Now, please do read the rest of the sutra, right? It's a lot of points. It's easy to understand direct. Please do read the rest of the sutra, and I will connect this last part into the other sutra that we will be following, right? Which is based on the letting go of self. But we will go through these parts. So please do read and come back with your questions, should you have any. Should you have any. So before we do close the session today, do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
Mante, this reference, SA stand for what?
Which one?
He quote this reference, SA 3:1.
Suitable talk.
මේකනේ.
Yeah.
Uh,
SA.
සංයුත්ත නෑ.
No, Samyutta Nikaya is
Samyutta.
this SN is Samyutta Nikaya.
SA.
Yeah.
Doesn't say. Can I check on that and let you know, Damsari?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because we can, because all these divisions, subdivisions are
It
actually,
could be Attasalini.
or some, okay, can be,
It's a commentary. It's a commentary.
it must be a commentary, yeah.
It's
Okay.
a sutra commentary. So I will
Yeah.
find what this essay is.
Yeah.
And I will let you know. We have quite a few, isn't it?
Yeah.
We
All
have-
the subdivisions are
Yeah,
actually
Samyutta Nikaya is here, SN.
SN, yeah, SN.
Okay, let me find that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
හරි. එනම් මේ ඔක්කොමලාට අදට පෙරුවන් සරණයි. I will see you tomorrow for the Thursday class, everyone.
Yeah.
තෙරුවන්
තෙරුවන් සරණයි
සරණයි.
බන්ටි, thank you.
සරණයි. තෙරුවන්
තෙරුවන්
සරණයි.
සරණයි.
තෙරුවන්